Welcome to AceCo Tech Talk number 8, Sharpening AceCo Finger Joint Cutters. The following procedure outlines the steps for grinding the face and gullet of AceCo finger joint cutters. Grinding the cutter face and maintenance of the gullet radius and depth can be accomplished in one step with the correct radius grinding wheel and an AceCo hook gauge. Key items before you begin. It is necessary to have the correct type of grinding wheel for the grinding process. Use of a cubic boron nitride CBN wheel with a radius is recommended. Use 100 to 180 grit for standard M2 high-speed steel knives. Use 220 grit for Evo 3 coated knives. It is necessary to have the correct hook gauge for the grinding process. There are different hook gauges for the various cutters that AceCo offers. With the grinding process, it is imperative to maintain the proper gullet radius of the knife. The proper gullet radius and depth are critical to the optimal functioning of AceCo finger joint cutters. Proper gullet depth assures that the joint is cut with the bevel of the cutter and not the index surface of the cutter. The gullet distributes the cutting load over a wide area and lessens the chance for cutter breakage. Proper hook angle and gullet depth is attainable without grinding into the cutter head. Setting the head on the grinding machine. Verify that the diameter of the head and the arbor are the same size. Wipe the arbor clean and examine for burrs, scarring, or damage. Wipe the inside bore of the head clean and examine for burrs, scarring, or damage. Do not attempt to mount the head on the arbor if either the head or arbor has damage. Both the arbor and the head are precision tools. Damage to one will most certainly damage the other. Verify that the number of notches on the indexing plate can be divided evenly by the number of bolts in the head to be ground. Change the indexing plate if necessary. Inspect the indexing plate and lock to ensure that they are tight and in good condition. Loosen the relief valve to release pressure in the head. Color all knife stack faces with a felt-tipped marker to aid in identifying grind pattern. Select a cutter stack to be ground and position next to the grinding wheel. Always begin grinding with stack bolt 1. This will aid in solving grinding related issues that may arise. Carefully install the head on the arbor, making sure the cutters are facing the proper side of the grinding wheel. Before pressurizing the head, verify that the cutter stacks will clear both ends of the grinding wheel. Adjust the limit switches or reposition head on the arbor if necessary. Rotate the head until the faces of the cutters to be ground are in a vertical position. The cutters should be parallel to the grinding wheel. A small combination square works well for this. Close the relief port and pressurize the head to the recommended pressure engraved on the end of the AceLock hydraulic sleeve. Wipe all excess grease from around the inlet valve and relief valve using a cotton swab. Recheck the knife stack faces. They should be vertical. Adjust if necessary. Set grinding wheel height and depth to within 30 thousandths of the cutter faces and gullets. Make a few test passes to ensure that the cutter stack clears the wheel at both ends of travel. Adjust cutter head or grinding wheel if necessary. Turn on wheel and coolant. Position coolant nozzles to the point of cutter grinder contact. Start table motion and slowly adjust the wheel inward towards the cutters. Note, adjust the wheel only when the cutters are positioned on the leading edge of the wheel. Adjusting the wheel on the trailing side could cause excessive grinding pressure when the cutters return to the leading edge, thereby overheating and possibly damaging the cutter tips. Adjust wheel very slowly toward the cutters until light contact is made. Advance the wheel inward 5/10,000ths of an inch every few passes until a good grind pattern is visible. Grinding with light passes will minimize the size of burrs created on the sides and tips of the cutters. The grind pattern should be uniform across the entire face of the cutter stack, side to side, top to bottom. Once the grind pattern is uniform, stop the machine and check the cutter stack with an AceCo hook gauge. Inspect at both ends of the stack. Note: best practice is to slide the hook gauge down the face of the knife, holding pressure, looking for light on the radius of the knife. If a hook angle adjustment is necessary, rotate the cutter tips toward or away from the wheel a very slight amount. If angle and depth are acceptable and all cutter faces are uniformly cleaned up, start the grinding process, advancing the wheel inwardly approximately 5/10,000ths of an inch each pass until 2/1000ths of an inch of material has been removed. With each inward adjustment, allow the machine to cycle until you cannot hear the wheel grinding. It is important to not overpressure the grinding wheel by adjusting inward in too big of steps. This will cause an uneven grind pressure and excessive burning on the edges and the tips of the knives. After the cutter stack has been ground, where approximately 2/1000ths of an inch of material has been removed, recheck the hook angle and inspect cutter tips under magnification using a 10 to 20 power loop to ensure that the corners are square and sharp. If acceptable, mark this position on the infeed wheel and grind remaining stacks to this depth. Back the grinder infeed out until there is no contact between the cutters and wheel. Advance the head to the next stack and begin the process again. Start the grinder and coolant, then advance the wheel in slightly and allow to dwell until all marker is removed. Any remaining marker indicates a low area that must be ground out before proceeding. After all stacks have been ground, make one final pass, allowing the grinding wheel to make several dwell passes across the knives. The infeed should not be changed from the marked position. Return the head and arbor to the original starting position, cutter stack bolt number 1. This will correctly position the arbor for the next head to be ground. Before depressurizing the head, examine the areas around the sleeve, inlet, and relief valves for grease seepage. Do not install the head on a machine spindle until the grease leaks have been identified, inspected, and eliminated. When finished, depressurize and remove head. Blow off all moisture and grinding residue with compressed air.
From all of us here in Boise, Idaho, we'd like to thank you for watching. Hopefully you learned something.